Hey, I'm Richard at Gotta Ride Bikes, and we're gonna change a flat under ideal circumstances. It's so ideal, the tire's not even flat, we're just going through the motions today. So the first thing we have to do is flatten the tire. We'll start off, press the little valve in. Alright, so we flatten this tire, and it's an emergency now. I've got it hanging in the stand, but you can of course just flip the bike over or hang it from the saddle or something like that. The first thing I like to do is go all the way down to the hardest gear. So it puts the chain on the hardest gear. That'll make it easier to get the bike in and out of the dropout. So we go over here and open up the quick release if your bike is lucky enough to have one. Otherwise you should have a wrench. And this, what I like to do is just let it drop straight out the bottom, move the chain out of the way, and it's free. You don't have to mess with the tension or the nut or anything. If you're lucky enough to have a bench or a surface you can work on while you're changing your flat, I think it makes it a lot easier. So we rest the hub against the edge of the bench, we deflate the valve and push this sucker in, and then we start by grabbing the tire here and pushing it towards the hub when you're on this half of the wheel, and away from the hub when you're on the other half of the wheel. And if you push just the tire and keep the wheel in place, then it'll make a little loop up here at the top, which you can kind of manipulate by hand. If it doesn't, or if your loop's not big enough, you can push as much of this over towards the other end as you can and slip these little tire levers in. Normally one goes here. If it's real tight, you'll put another one here. Grab them both with your hand and just pull that guy over the edge and zipper the whole wheel off. The wheel comes out. I like to go ahead and take the whole wheel off because you can pull the inner tube out and wipe it down for thorns if you put a new tire back, or if you put a new tube in a tire that already has a thorn in it. You get to curse a lot and repeat this whole procedure. So we use a rag. If you're on the trail, find a glove or a do-rag or a shirt or something, but you definitely want to check and make sure there's not any thorns in here. It's been my experience, they normally go in at some kind of an angle. They never go in perfectly perpendicular to the tire, so I like to rotate the tire in both directions and see if thorns catch from any different angles. And then we remember that this tire wasn't even flat, so we just go ahead and nut it back up to the rim. Tire rotation, the direction that the tire rotates is important. Normally it's listed somewhere on the sidewall, kind of the same place that the tire pressure is. So this one's a rear, and the tire is going to rotate that way. We keep it in mind with the cassette because you don't want to mount it backwards, because if nothing else it makes you look unprofessional. And we tend to line the labels up with the valve stem because it makes flats easier to chase down in the future. First bead normally goes on real easy. Start off here at the valve, just kind of walk the bead onto the edge so it's down in the little rim cavity. And then I'll take the tube. We're going to reuse this tube and just put a little bit of air in it so it has some shape. That's really enough. The whole thing lays over on top. Then we'll peel the tire back, stick the little valvey through, and pull the tire forward. If everything's set up right and you have just a little bit of shape in your tire and it's not overinflated, then for the most part it should just lay back into the rim, just like that. Then we'll make sure the valve's straight, let the rest of the air out, and start to work on tucking this other bead into the rim. Start right here at the valve. Just use your thumbs on both halves of the rim to push this guy the whole way around. Sometimes you get lucky and get really nice loose tires that just go on by hand. If you don't, then we go back to the tire lever. This guy goes on here and here, and you push him over, but you want to be real careful not to actually pinch the inner tube with the lever against the rim, or you get to do this over again. So that's really about it. You get the whole thing back together. Put just a little bit of air in the tire to start off with, and make sure that the tire takes seat into the rim. So we spin it and make sure nothing really jumps or dips too terribly bad. And that guy looks okay. So we go ahead and put the rest of our pressure in. This guy runs like 30 psi, so that's what we fill it to. Close this back up. Then we walk back over here to the bike. I like to stick the wheel up into the bottom bracket mount back here where the chain stays come together. And then I'll make sure this cog of the cassette, the little cog, goes against this cog on the rear derailleur. Bloop, bloop. And if you line everything up before you really get too carried away and just pull the rear derailleur out of the way, then the rear wheel just kind of rotates up into the axle dropouts where it's supposed to go. And then we tighten that back down because we didn't mess with this tension. And you're off and running. Then before you get it back to the customer, try and mount it back up. Shift it into a gear you can actually pedal off